So I think we can move on. I think Daniel Harris is with us this morning. Daniel, good morning to you.
Morning.
You kind of agree with Richard Keys can feck off, right?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because when you hear people talk about Roy Keane, they talk about that he was just a psychopath who did a lot of shouting and a lot of running, but it's bollocks. Roy Keane was one of the greatest passers of the ball I've ever seen. If you look at him, he almost never gave the ball away. Like the group of mates I used to go to United with in those days, we would kind of note it if there'd been a game where we'd seen Roy Keane give the ball away. And he didn't give it away he wasn't not giving it away because he was passing safe. If you ever watch the United treble DVD, where they start showing a season's highlights, but the bit of the goal that they start showing where kind of danger commences and you hear the Jaws music, almost always starts with a Roy Keane pass. A low, hard, intelligent pass fizzed into space that fizzed into feet, that changed the whole tenor of the attack. And he wasn't, as I said, just the bloke who kicked people and ran and got angry and all the rest of it, but he had a brilliant appreciation of space and a brilliant appreciation of angles and of the force at which you could deliver a pass to change the tempo and to change the focus of an attack. And anyone that can't see that is not worth listening to about anything to do with football, and probably anything to do with anything else either.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the other thing that's been good about this conversation coming back to the fore after what happened at the weekend with beIN Sports is that it's clear that there is a complete lack of somebody doing that for Manchester United at the moment in midfield, and it's clear that because you have somebody who's able to do that in the Ferguson era, and because that's what he wants from his midfielders, that there was an identity to the team. There's loads of other reasons why that team had an identity because of the quality of the rest of the team as well, but that's specifically what's missing at the moment from Manchester United, is any sense of identity in that midfield area and what the team are trying to do with their very talented players.
Yeah, I agree. The people that replaced Roy Keane, also, they didn't offer everything that Roy Keane offered, but Michael Carrick offered a different version of that. He would get on the ball and he would pass it forward quickly and accurately off either foot, and that would enable you to attack quickly. Darren Fletcher would get the ball and he would, whatever he did with it, it would be done quickly with urgency. Whereas now everything is done slowly. And you saw the game last night that Pogba, for some reason, I don't know why it is, I think I read somewhere yesterday, someone saying that Roy Keane was a first half player when the game was in the balance. Pogba is different. He's a second half player, and he actually played, I thought, quite well in the second half. I mean, obviously, all of this is relative, but he was actually the one who was trying to make things happen in the second half, but he didn't have any help. Quite why he's unable so often to get to the tempo of a game until the second half, I'm not quite sure, but it's something that I've noticed now over a course of a couple of seasons. But he was doing his best, but he didn't have enough around him. And I can see why you play Fellaini and Matic together. Well, I can't really see why you play Fellaini and Matic together, but I understand why Mourinho did it against Burnley when he needed a result after two bad defeats, and why he did it again against Watford in away games. The ball's going to be in the box a lot and all the rest of it. But I can't envisage a situation in which that isn't getting passed around when you play one of the better Spanish teams in Europe. And that's what we saw yesterday. Like one of them you could perhaps excuse, but sitting there watching it, you also wonder what Mourinho was doing buying Fred, which is you can't expect someone to come in, turn up and be great from the start, and you've obviously got to win your place and all the rest of it, but if you can't get in the team to play against Valencia and Fellaini and Matic are getting picked ahead of you, that to me looks like more a problem with the manager than a problem with Fred himself.
Yeah, look, we've been talking basically since pre-season about how much longer we were going to be part of the Jose Mourinho era at Manchester United. Now that we've seen the football begin to unfold over the first two months proper of the season, what's the timeline here, Daniel? What do you think is going to happen?
I don't think there is anyone really left or that expects that this is going to get very much better now. Seems to me like, I mean, people suspected since before he came to United that the magic has gone. Even when he was last at Chelsea, he did win the league, but it wasn't a very high standard of league, and he didn't do it with the same kind of enthusiasm, virility that he had done it with previously. And at United, he's done an all right job prior to this season to get them from where they were to where they are, despite the standard of football being way lower than it should be with the players that he's got. But now it's beginning to look like the players have no faith, and it's not acceptable for them to be this clueless after playing for him for so long. And what you see in every game is the focus of what they're meant to be doing changes so that no one has any clue what is actually meant to be happening. So just to give you an example, Alexis Sanchez played on the right last night. Alexis Sanchez, I don't think, has played on the right for United at all since he joined. But when he did join, he was immediately put on the left when United had two players, Martial and Rashford, who were both playing really well on the left. And then Mourinho just immediately put him ahead of them, even though there was a space on the other side. And then those two haven't really been the same since. And then we see finally, a year later almost, Sanchez turns up on the right for one game. And who expects Sanchez to play on the right again in the next game? Not me, not anyone, I don't think. And that's just an example of the muddled thinking. Like, what type of team are United? What type of team are United trying to be? I don't think anyone knows the answer to that. I don't think Mourinho knows the answer to that. I don't think he really even cares what the answer to that is. And it feels now like we're just waiting for something bad enough to happen for them to shake hands.
I can't quite work out if once the Manchester United job becomes available, whether it's a poison chalice or whether it represents a fantastic opportunity for a manager. Because on the one hand, you can point to the fact that there are some fantastic players drastically underperforming, like the idea that you pointed there of Carrick and Fletcher being so effective in a role that Paul Pogba, a World Cup winner, is being so ineffective in, is laughable really. But at the same time, do they look at these underperforming players as an awful attitude within the playing group, an unfixably awful attitude perhaps?
I think that if you consider the United job to be a poison chalice, you're not the right man to have it. I mean, Fergie was very clear about this, that when he turned up, for example, he was kind of daunted by it, like the stories of he used to go around like muttering to people, big club this, but publicly he would always seek the help of Matt Busby, for example, whereas everyone prior to him had sort of been a bit dwarfed by the presence of Busby, and he would always kind of embrace the history rather than consider it a bit of a problem. United hadn't won the league all this time, hadn't won the league for a long time before when he got the job. He would always say, we're going to try and win the league, rather than be daunted by the fact that hadn't happened. As for the players, if the United were to get a new manager, they're getting an imbalanced squad, but they're getting a squad, as you say, with some good players. It's quite hard to be judgmental when players toss it off to try and get rid of a manager, because we've seen so often players do exactly that. Then as soon as they get a different manager, they turn it back up again. So, and I think that we kind of, as a supporter, you look at it and think supporters deserve better. And even as a writer, I look at it and think supporters deserve better than players not trying. On the other hand, I do understand the mentality of a player who thinks, this is my career, it's a short career, I only get one hit at it. If 4 or 5 weeks of me not trying and my mates not trying is going to get rid of this bloke who's ruining my career, then I'll do that. And if you look at sometimes when managers leave clubs, for example, when Roy Hodgson was at Liverpool, it was obvious that he was the wrong man for that job. So basically, the fans got rid of him. They got getting on his back to the extent that he went eventually because the pressure became too great for the board. Then when David Moyes was at Man United, that was a pretty similar situation, I thought. But the fans didn't get behind. The fans didn't do enough to get rid of David Moyes. So basically, the players took it into their own hands and made sure that he went. So I do understand both sides. On the other hand, you do feel that there should be enough professional pride, because then you think, well, you look, for example, at Mourinho's Chelsea team. When Mourinho got fired, they had Avram Grant bestowed upon them. And because they were a manically driven bunch of proud professionals, they made it work. And they got to the European Cup final. They got within a slip of winning that. They came second in the league with Avram Grant, despite the fact that no one thought Avram Grant had anything to tell them whatsoever, because that's the right way to respect their own talent. I mean, it's a selfish act in the end. I don't think they were doing it for the supporters particularly. They're doing it because that is what they wanted. United doesn't have that kind of professional personalities in the squad, and I think that's part of the problem. Like, Pogba keeps getting talked about, but he at least has some competitive charisma. There's not a lot more of that elsewhere in the squad, and that is one aspect of the problem. There's no one who looks to try and grab hold of it when things are going wrong, and any other manager is going to find that and going to probably want to add to it. But at the same time, what you're seeing from United at the moment is about as bad as that group of players are able to deliver. So anyone that did subsequently turn up would probably find things improve significantly quite quickly.
Yeah, like when you look through the squad and you look through the list of players, there's the backbone of a really good team there, and whatever new manager comes in, whatever style of play he wants to have the team embody, then sure, absolutely, he needs to add a few players to make that happen. But like, the bones of a really good team are right there, ready to go. So you can imagine some of the best managers in the world want this job. It's just that it's hard to get those in the middle of a season. So do they, if you're Woodward and you're the owners, do you think, okay, well, let's just play this season out now and see where it takes us, and next summer we will re-examine and see who is available and ready to come to us?
No. As Roy Keane once said, the only thing that goes with the flow is a dead fish. And what the problem, you run the risk at the moment. If you, let's say Mourinho continues, you're definitely running a very strong risk of missing fourth. You've got absolutely no chance of doing anything in Europe. And what the real risk, I think, is that players will mentally check out. And then they're not going to know whether Mourinho's staying or going. So then they start to think, well, actually, I want to be somewhere else, start to look at going to other places. So that, let's say someone new were to come in the summer, you don't just have to persuade people to join a club that's not in the European Cup. You're also trying to persuade the guys that you want to keep, not just to stay, but to break off whatever negotiations they're already involved in. I would say that even if it were Carrick to the end of the season, the atmosphere around the club would probably improve. The players would start to enjoy it a bit more. The football would improve. And I don't think that that's the ideal situation. I mean, I think that the problem is that no one above Mourinho knows anything about football. Football's not even a priority. Business is a priority, and football is only a priority in as much as it feeds directly into how much money they can make. Okay. So I don't think you're going to get an investment in someone who can build something. I don't think they know who Jardim is, who Nagelsmann is, who any of these people are. I think that what you get is the next big name that anyone could think of. It's probably Zidane. I said on Twitter a while ago that United met Zidane in America in the summer. They did. I think Zidane would be a mad choice, but I think that he'd probably be the most likely one.
In the meantime, so you were saying potentially Carrick till the end of the season would actually improve the mood and the atmosphere and the football. The counter argument obviously is that Ryan Giggs came in and the football did not improve. The results actually got worse that time. So there's no guarantee that Carrick would actually be any better than what's happening at the moment.
100%. It might not be better, but the intention, I think, of the team would be better. Because what I'm saying is, in the same with David Moyes and Ryan Giggs, it wasn't possible for things to get very much worse, for them to get any less out of what they had. So it's true, Giggs was only a few games anyway, but I think that just the mood of seeing Ryan Giggs on the touchline felt like people appreciated that. Not for very long, once they started playing football, but there was at least, like, they won his first game 4-0. People kind of quite enjoyed that. I think that it's not quite... so you get Carrick, and I don't think that's what will happen. I don't think it will be Carrick, but I think that with Mourinho, once things start going wrong, it gets quite poisonous quite quickly, and you just don't want that in the club. And so even if the next bloke, the results don't improve, even if the results get worse, you're at least moving on to the next stage. Whereas at the moment, you've got this stasis, basically, not even stasis, you've just got this unpleasant circumstance. And the longer you have an unpleasant circumstance, the more it infects all the other things that are going on. And so I think that you need to stop that. The problem, of course, is that Woodward doesn't know anything about football. He appointed Mourinho, probably doesn't want to have to fire someone else, and also just doesn't seem to be well furnished in the department of testicles. He hung on to Moyes for way longer than he should have done. Van Gaal basically almost like fired himself in December, but hung on until the end of the season. And so he's not, then Woodward himself stopped Mourinho buying the players that he wanted in the summer and didn't fire him, which is an absolutely ludicrous way to go about things. So he's not someone that can be relied upon to act promptly or act sensibly or act altruistically.
Give me a timeline then. How much longer? End of days here, are we 40 days? Are we 3 weeks? Are we 2 weeks? Are we next week?
I mean, if they got beaten at home by Newcastle at the weekend, that would look quite bad. But then after that, things start to get a bit more complicated. They're away to Chelsea. Like, part of me feels that he should be made to get a thrashing at Chelsea first before he goes. But then they've got 2 games against Juventus, and those 2 games against Juventus, you're actually starting to get into the point where the season could easily be ruined. If United had won last night, those games against Juventus would matter a bit less. Because if they won last night, then basically a point in either Juventus game or away in Valencia would probably be enough to qualify from the Champions League. But they drew. So they're actually going to need to get something from those Juventus games, and maybe in Spain also. So if you start going towards them with Mourinho, then you're effectively getting in towards Mourinho ruining the season circumstance. And I don't think anyone would want that. And you start getting further off in the league. If they don't beat Newcastle, again, there'll be some more pressure. But from memory, I mean, it seems anyway like there was a lot more pressure on Moyes and Van Gaal for a lot longer before they went. So I don't particularly see that anything is likely to happen in the next couple of weeks, but perhaps I'm wrong.
All right, Daniel, great stuff. Thanks very much for joining us this morning.
All right, see you again.
Daniel Harris there.